Java Language Fundamentals. What we're going to do now is start digging into the nuts and bolts of Java. The language constructs, the fundamentals of just working with and utilizing the Java language. We're going to start off by taking a nice good look at the basic Java application. I like to think of this as the anatomy of a Java program. And the neat thing about this is that the simplest Java application to the most complex, for the most part, the anatomy is still the same. The rules of Java still apply, and there are a lot of rules that you're going to need to learn and really integrate, into your memory, and then you'll have a good time writing Java applications. So we're going to start off nice and slow there, and you'll see as we progress how the cool thing about Java, I'll just say this, there are a ton of rules surrounding Java. But the cool thing is once you get them, they don't really change and they stay very consistent. And then eventually they start making sense, and that's the neat part. Now, there's a common signature that all Java applications have, and that is called the main method. This is the entry point. This is where Java applications begin. So when we go over the anatomy up here, I'm going to spend a little bit more time focusing in on the main method. Then we're going to go over the rules of Java, the syntax rules. For example, what are the rules regarding a Java statement? How do I make comments in my code? Every programming language gives you the ability to create comments. That's also referred to as documentation inside of your code. So you can leave notes to yourself as to why am I doing this. Then we'll go over some key words that are important for you to know when programming in Java. Let's go ahead and begin by launching Notepad. So I'm going to click Start Run, and I'm going to type Notepad. I already had it in there, so I'm going to go ahead and start that off. Okay, the first thing I'm going to write here is public class, and I'm going to give the class a name. I'll call this Demo2, and I open up the curly, and I close the curly. Let's go ahead and stop here for right now, and let me kind of go over what I've done so far. Java is an object-oriented programming language, and we're going to talk a lot about that. The thing that you need to realize at this stage of the game is that everything we do and write in Java somehow lives in a special language construct called a class. All object-oriented programming languages utilize classes. Classes are the basis for objects. You see, we don't really see objects. We utilize them once they're in memory. So what we're doing is we are creating the blueprint for what is to become an object, or the model for what is to become an object. And I'm going to spend a lot more time developing this later on, but right now what you need to know is that all Java applications, here's a hard and fast, simple rule, just take this on faith, all Java applications have at least one class. Now, the file that we're going to be working with is called the compilation unit. And you can have multiple classes in a file. So I could have class demo3. And just so you know, too, you can put the curly brace right at the end and then close it there, too. This is actually the more traditional way of doing it. I've kind of come along and I'm a proponent of doing it this way because as you'll see later on, you're going to want to learn how to line these up so you could see how you're indenting your code to help you out. And I can go ahead and create class demo 4. Okay. Now, the curly braces. All of the code within your all the code within the class lives within the curly brace. As a matter of fact, there's only a couple of things that will live outside of the class here. And by the time we're done, you will know what those are, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. Now, notice this. I have the word public here. Public is an access modifier. And that access modifier means that in terms of security, it is wide open and publicly available. All code on your computer has access to it. Now, it needs to be public. at least one class needs to be public. And as a matter of fact, here's another hard rule for you, is a compilation unit, which is the name of this file, can only have one public class. So I can have as many classes as I want, but I can only have one public class. Now, how do I name a class? It's pretty easy. It has to start with a letter, an underscore, or a dollar sign. So something like this, believe it or not, class with an underscore like that is legal. You just wouldn't want to do that. That would be a bad thing. The reason that this is bad, to name it simply underscore, is because what in the world is it? I have no idea. Later on you're going to see we're going to be giving our classes more meaningful names than Demo 2, Demo 3, and Demo 4. But by the way, just to get you thinking, what is a class really? Well, it's going to be an object, and objects are based on people, places, or things. They're kind of like nouns. So if you were to write an application to maybe work in a corporate HR environment, you might create an employee class. Okay, the compilation unit must be named after the public class within the compilation unit. So here I have 3 classes. The compilation unit has to be named for the public class and case sensitively. That's kind of a mouthful. Notice how the capital is of D, so demo 2. So what I name this class is I will name it, and I put it in quotes so it doesn't become dot text at the end of it, demo 2.java. So compilation units are named after the public class and have a .java file extension. So let me hop out to a command prompt and go into my Java/intro directory. And here you can see that I've got my demo2.java file. Now, watch what happens when I compile it. Remember, to compile it, I use javac for Java compiler and the name of the compilation unit, otherwise the .java file. Now, once I compile that, watch what gets created. Now, it's going to take a few seconds. Time, can vary depending on how fast your system is, how busy it is. But let me do a dir, and you will notice that I've got .class files, several of them. As a matter of fact, let me do a dir of star.class so we can just clearly see that. Notice that for every class I have in my single compilation unit, I have a class file. Let me do a file listing this way: dir demo star.star. Okay, so here I've got my demo2.java, the compilation unit. We as programmers, we work with compilation units. This is where we're going to edit our code, develop our code. Once we compile it, for every class within the compilation unit, you will get a .class file. Now, what do those class files look like? Well, let me go ahead and open up my directory here. And let's go ahead and right-click on a class file and throw that into my text editor. I'll open this with like Notepad. Right-click on it and open it with TextPad. So I'll say send to TextPad here. TextPad will take a second and open up. And all I want you to just see for right now is that it is a bunch of garbage. It's just gibberish. Remember, what happens is when I compile my code, my .java file, it becomes bytecode. My compilation unit becomes a bytecode, and that is read by the Java runtime environment. And therefore, it's not really human readable. What I'm going to do now is just delete these class files. Now, when I recompile this, the class files that I created earlier will not go away. So if I save this, okay, get rid of that, and I only have that one. If I do a javac of demo2.java, hit enter, let it do its thing, do a dir, you can still see I've got my older class files. So I can delete those if I want, or they can just live there. It's not going to hurt anybody. The next thing I have to do in my application is I must provide the main method. The main method always, and this is easy, looks like this: public static void main lowercase m string with brackets there, args, parenthesis. Now here's personal touch, personal preference versus one person's doing things of the other. You can go ahead and open your curly brace there and close it there. Notice how I indent. You don't have to indent. If I wanted to, my Java application could basically, be on one huge line, or everything can be justified. I mean, literally, as long as it's syntactically correct, you're pretty good to go. So another rule is Java doesn't really care too much about white space for the most part. But, I mean, how can I see things? I need to indent. So your indentation style is critical. Again, what I like to do is follow my rule about opening and closing the curly brace right as I go along on separate lines, okay? This method is the main method. It is the entry point for all Java applications. So therefore, its access modifier must be static, must be public. What does static mean? Static means, and we'll go over this in a little bit more detail later on, means that you do not have to instantiate an instance of the demo2 class in order to have access to the method. That actually will make sense later on as I go over more static, but let me just say this. The Java runtime environment is actually going to be accessing this and launching your application from in here. So therefore, it cannot instantiate or create an instance of your class. The word void here means that this method does not return anything. Main is the name of the method, and string args are the parameters that this method takes. So now what I can do is I can make a call to system.out.println, and I could put my hi everybody in there. This line here is basically a reference to standard output. Standard output is the command prompt or the DOS prompt. So now I'll go ahead and save this. I will compile it again, javac demo2.java. If I don't have any mistakes, I just get my command prompt back. You know what? I think I'm going to create a mistake just to show you what you get. Java demo2, and I get hi everybody to the prompt. Let's go ahead and create a mistake. Let's say I forget the semicolon here. All right, now I'm going to save it, and I'm going to recompile it. So javac demo2.java. Let's see what happens here. Oh, this is where it starts yelling at you. Now, here you can see the compiler is actually giving me a good hint as to what's going on. This is a fairly easy compiling error, a fairly easy error for the compiler to catch. So it'll tell you. Later on, you'll see that, well, sometimes the compiler puts you in the right area, but doesn't actually give you the exact error. All statements in Java end with a semicolon. Every single one. So there's another rule for you. So I put that back in there. I hit my up arrow key to recall the last command I entered in my DOS prompt, and I get my command back there, and I'm back up and running. So that right there is the essence of every single Java application. A Java application must have a single class. The name of the class, case sensitively, will be the name of the .java file, otherwise known as the compilation unit. All Java applications must have a public static void main method that takes string args. And I'll show you a little bit more about that later on. And then you put your statements in there. This statement, which we will become intimate with as we move along, is basically a reference to printing whatever you have in here to standard output. Something else I wanted to cover in this topic, in this video, were comments. Comments is the ability for you to put code inside of your class, inside of your compilation units, that basically get ignored by the compiler. And there are several types of comments that I'm going to go over. The two that I'm going to go over now are simply single line comments and multi-line comments. Single line comments start with a /, asterisk, and they end with an asterisk /. Everything in here is ignored by the compiler. So usually what you do is you give yourself a nice little header. Let's say the demo2 application written by, and maybe your name, date, some date info, let's say. Maybe you also will put a version number, 1.0.0.0, something like that. And if I save this and recompile it, you'll see that nothing happens. Okay. Now, again, as soon as, let's say I forget that, oops, let me back that up. As soon as I forget that /, I save it, come back to my prompt, and recompile it, or it errors out on me. Now, it's not sure what's going on here. It's telling me it's expecting the class keyword or the interface keyword, when in actuality, when I revisit it, it's missing the character of the / to indicate that the comment is over. Now, what I normally do is I like to go ahead and kind of do this whole thing just to make it pretty. So I might do a couple of rows like that, and then have a couple of lines kind of like that, just so my comment block, my header, really kind of stands out. And again, it's all personal preference. It's completely up to you what you want to do, but I just want to show you kind of what you might want to consider doing when you're writing your applications. Comments are going to save your life. All right, those are multiple line comments. Again, it starts with the / asterisk and ends with the asterisk /. Everything in the middle is ignored by the compiler. What about single line comments? Well, let's take a look here. Let's say I wanted to explain to you what system.out.println did. I've said many times that this is the standard output. So a single line comment are 2 /. And I'll say this is a reference to standard output. And I'll say the command window. Okay? Now this is just me typing a note here, but because I preceded this note with 2 /, it is ignored by the compiler. I save it, I reissue my compiling command, and that's it. We're back in business. The application will still run just fine. 2 types of comments, those are there. Now, things like public, class, the word static, void, the word system, these are Java keywords. What I want to do now is go over the various keywords that you have to kind of tuck away in your head, because you cannot name classes and variables and your own constructs utilizing these keywords. Now, one of my goals in this course not only is to get you proficient with using Java, but it's getting proficient with using every Java developer's best buddy, the following website, java.sun.com. And I'm going to use it as an example to show you where I could get information about, let's say, keywords. So here I bring up the java.sun.com website, and we get a nice greeting by James Gosling, which is always a nice thing to have. And I type in keywords into the search field, and I press enter on my keyboard. And it goes ahead and does its search, and that's great. And look at that. What comes right up? Java language keywords. And this is a list of the keywords used by Java. Now, we will be going over and utilizing most of these keywords. And you don't have to memorize them, I guess, for right now, but let me just tell you something. It's a good idea to maybe print this out until you get used to it, because you cannot use these words outside of their defined utilization or their predefined usage within the Java language. Words like abstract or break or byte or for, like for is used in a for loop, so you can't create a variable called for. Public, I already went over. Here is a void, already kind of talked to you a little bit about the word void. Static, right there, okay? Uh, if, used for if logic. Private, that's another access modifier. Protected, that's another access modifier. Something else to point out in what we'll go over is you could only utilize these words on certain places. That's the first thing to know. Like, for example, public can go on classes, methods, and variables, but the word try cannot. Okay? Or finally can go on classes, methods, and variables or fields, but it means something differently wherever you put it. And you'll find that's true for most of these words, but not a problem because we're going to go over all that stuff. So that is those are the main key words and how to find them so you can always have a reference to them. Now I'd like to go over and kind of review some of the key syntax rules with you. So let's kind of go over the Java syntax rules that I just want you to know about right now. More to come. The first thing that I want you to remember is Java is case sensitive. That means if you create a class demo1 with a capital D and a public class demo1 with a lowercase d, that Java will see those as two different classes. Okay? Now that could be a good thing or a bad thing. This particular example, I think it's a bad thing because what's the difference between a capital D demo1 and a lowercase d demo1? By the way, the word public, lowercase p. Class, all lowercase here, okay? Second thing, how do you end statements in Java? A statement in Java is a sentence. Just like in English, we have a character that ends our sentences, namely the period. The sentence ender, if you will, or how you end a statement in Java is with a semicolon. So all statements have to end with a semicolon. Now, there are some language constructs that we will use that do not end in a semicolon, namely like, declaring methods. But that's not really, when we declare a method, I should say, that's not really a Java statement. Okay, so more on that when we work with methods, but just for now, know that all statements end with a semicolon. And then finally, that list of keywords that I showed you. You need to be aware of those. Those will do things like cause compiling errors. For example, if I go ahead and create another class here, let's get rid of that. And I create a class, so let me go into Notepad, and I create a class public class 4. Remember that was a keyword, okay? And we save this, and I save it as in my fundamentals as quote 4.java. Okay, and I go into my command prompt and I go into my fundamentals directory. Okay, there's my 4.java. Now watch this. Java C 4.java. What's going to happen is it is going to bomb. Now, I wish the compiler would say something like, oh, you're using a keyword, but it doesn't. Because if as soon as I name this, let's say capital 4, and I resave it as 4.java, yeah, I want to replace it. I do a Java C 4.java, compile that again, you'll notice that it compiled. It's pretty weird, isn't it? But that's how it works. 4 with a lowercase f is a keyword, but 4 with a capital F is not a keyword, so therefore it compiles. In Java Language Fundamentals, we went over the anatomy of a basic Java application. Kind of went over what that's all about. Talked to you a little bit about the class, and compilation units. And I said that a compilation unit can only have one class, and it has to be named after the public class case sensitively. Compilation units have that .java file extension. And we went over the main method. This is the entry point in which all Java applications start. Then I wrapped up talking about some syntax rules. I hope you have found this informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.